My name is Cora Maddox. I am 30 years old. And the thing about being told your success is luck is that it leaves a very particular kind of mark. Not the kind that shows, but the kind you feel every time someone asks you to explain yourself, and you have to decide all over again whether you owe them the explanation. I have been making that decision for most of my adult life. Let me tell you about the Easter lunch first. Then I will tell you everything that came before it, because the before is the part that makes the after make sense. And then I will tell you what happened 7 months later, on a Tuesday morning in November, when everything I had been quietly carrying finally had somewhere to land. It was April 9th, a Sunday, and my mother had been cooking since 7 in the morning. I know this because she told me so when I arrived at 11:47 a.m., in the specific way she announces effort, not as complaint but as ledger entry, a quiet notation of what has been invested and by whom, and the implicit understanding that the ledger is always open and always running. The table was set with the good plates. There were 12 people. My mother, my stepfather Ray, my Aunt Gloria and her husband Dennis, 3 cousins, a neighbor named Patsy who had been coming to holiday lunches for so long that she had ceased to require explanation, and 2 of Ray's adult sons from his first marriage who sat at the far end and talked about football throughout the entire meal in the low, companionable voices of men who have found a safe subject and are staying inside it. I had driven 40 minutes to be there. I had also, 4 days earlier on the Wednesday morning, received the formal offer letter for the Director of Strategy position at Callaway Group, the mid-sized consulting firm where I had worked for 6 years. The letter was dated April 5th. It included a new title, a base salary of $118,400, a performance bonus structure tied to engagement outcomes, and a start date of May 1st. I had read it 3 times sitting in my car in the parking structure before I trusted myself to go back inside. The number at the top of the second page had a shape to it that I kept needing to look at again, not because I doubted it, but because I had spent 6 years doing the work that produced it, and there is something about a number finally arriving that makes you want to confirm it is real. I had not told anyone yet. I wanted to tell my mother in person. The lunch went the way holiday lunches go in a family that has a specific shape to it. The food was good, the conversation distributed unevenly, the gravitational center of the table located wherever my mother happened to be sitting. She had a way of conducting a meal, my mother. Not loudly. She simply asked the questions and offered the observations that set the temperature of the room, and everyone else adjusted to that temperature without quite realizing they were doing so. It was not a skill she had developed deliberately. It was simply how she was, and how the room had always arranged itself around her. The promotion came up at 12:54 p.m. between the main course and dessert. In a lull she filled the way she always filled lulls, by pivoting to the one person at the table who had not yet had their turn. "So," she said, looking at me from across the table. "Anything new with you, Cora?" I had been waiting for this. I had practiced the shape of the sentence in the car on the way over, simply, without performance, the way you tell someone a true thing, and let it be what it is. "Actually, yes," I said. "I was promoted on Wednesday. Director of Strategy." The table paused. Not dramatically, the half-second pause of people recalibrating. My mother put down her fork. It was a slow, deliberate movement. She set it on the edge of her plate, folded her hands on the tablecloth, and looked at me with an expression I recognized. Not exactly disapproval, but something adjacent to it. Something that lived in the same neighborhood as disapproval and shared its particular quality of stillness.
"Director," she said.
"At 29. "Yes," I said. She was quiet for a moment. Around us the table had gone to a polite, attentive semi-silence, the kind that happens when a conversation becomes worth listening to.
"Sweetheart," she said.
"That's not merit. That's timing and luck. Companies do this. They move young people up quickly, and then the cycle reverses, and you're overexposed with nowhere to go. Don't let it go to your head." I felt the table shift. Not dramatically. The slight collective adjustment of people who have decided where to look and are staying there. Ray set down his own fork without looking up from his plate. "She's right, you know," he said, in the tone of a man confirming a weather report. "These things reverse fast. I've seen it 100 times. One cycle, and the whole thing unwinds." He had spent 22 years in mid-level insurance administration without a promotion past regional coordinator. I noted this and said nothing.
I said.
I finished my plate. I poured more water from the pitcher near my elbow. I ate the slice of lemon cake my mother served for dessert and told her it was the best she had ever made, which was true. I helped clear the dishes at 2:17 p.m. I hugged her at the door at 2:43 p.m. and she squeezed my arm and said, "I just don't want you to be blindsided. I'm looking out for you." "I know," I said. I drove 40 minutes home. I sat in my apartment with the offer letter still on the kitchen table and looked at it for a long time. Before I tell you what happened in the 7 months between that Easter and the morning the article ran, I want to ask you something. Tell me where you are right now as you watch this. Is it quiet where you are? That particular kind of quiet that settles in on a Sunday when the day has nowhere left to go? I want you to sit in that quiet with me for a moment. I want you to understand what it feels like to hold something real and have someone look at it and tell you it isn't. And then I want you to understand what I did with that feeling, which was not, as it turned out, what I expected myself to do. My mother's name is Diane Maddox. She is 56 years old. She works as an office manager for a dental practice in the town where I grew up, a position she has held for 11 years and which she describes, when it comes up, as something she fell into rather than chose. She is not a cruel woman. I want to say that plainly and mean it precisely. She is not cruel. She loves me consistently and in her own specific idiom, which includes certain habits of mind I have spent a long time learning to name accurately without flinching away from what they cost me. The habit I am describing is this. She does not believe that good things happen to people because of them. Not luck in the cynical sense. She is not cynical. Luck in the meteorological sense. The way weather arrives. When something good occurs in her own life, she attributes it to effort and persistence. When something good occurs in mine, she finds the external cause, the timing, the economy, the goodwill of someone above me who has arbitrarily extended a hand. I do not believe she knows she does this. That is the most difficult part to explain to people who have not experienced it because it makes the pattern harder to name and easier to dismiss and more persistent than almost anything else. She married Ray when I was 14. Ray is a steady, undemonstrative man who aligns himself with my mother's positions the way a compass needle aligns with north, automatically, without apparent deliberation. He is not unkind to me. I am simply not a thing he considers in any particular depth. Furniture from a previous arrangement. He is courteous about the furniture. Growing up, I learned to measure my news carefully before bringing it into that house. Not because sharing was ever explicitly punished, it wasn't, but because sharing good things produced a specific response that was, over time, more exhausting than silence. A grade I was proud of became an observation about grade inflation. A scholarship became a note about how competitive it would get in the real world. An academic award in 11th grade, which I received at a school assembly on March 3, 2009, prompted my mother to say, over dinner that evening at 6:45 p.m., "Don't let it make you arrogant." The other kids tried just as hard. I was 16. I had studied for that award for 4 months. I wrote the essay 3 times. I stopped telling her things that mattered to me by the time I was 17. Not dramatically. Gradually, the way you stop doing a thing that reliably produces a specific result you have decided to stop seeking. I went to a state university on a partial academic scholarship and a loan of $22,400 that I repaid over 6 years at $387 per month. I graduated in May 2016 with a degree in business and a 3.84 GPA. My mother attended the ceremony. She took photographs and posted 3 of them. None of the captions mentioned the GPA or the scholarship. I noticed and filed it in the archive of things I had noticed and filed and chosen not to raise. I joined Callaway Group in September 2016 as an analyst at a starting salary of $52,000. My direct manager was a woman named Patricia Osei, who had a directness I found immediately clarifying. She told me in our first week, on September 19th, in a conversation I still remember the exact shape of, that the firm rewarded people who solved the problems no one had yet thought to name. That sentence reorganized something in how I understood work, and I kept it. Over the next 3 years, I moved from analyst to senior analyst to associate manager. Each promotion came with a documented performance review and a raise, $11,200 total across 3 steps, and each review was specific, substantive, and filed in a folder on my desktop that I labeled simply, Record. Not out of defensiveness. Out of the instinct of a person who has spent a long time not being believed, who has learned that the careful preservation of evidence is not paranoia but preparation. In January 2020, the firm was awarded a restructuring engagement with a manufacturing client that had posted 4 consecutive quarters of underperformance. The client's annual revenue was $47 million. Patricia Osei assigned me to lead the diagnostic team. I was 25 years old. I spent the next 6 months building a strategic framework from the ground up, 3 iterations, 2 rounds of partner review, 1 significant restructure after the first client presentation, and a final version that I presented to the client's board on August 14, 2020, at 9 a.m., in a room where I was the youngest person by 11 years. The recommendations were implemented. By March 2021, the client had returned to profitability. The managing partner on the engagement, Stuart Calloway, the firm's CEO, wrote a personal note to my personnel file on March 17, 2021. Patricia showed it to me the following day. It read, Cora Maddox's diagnostic framework was the backbone of this engagement. Flag for accelerated track. I did not tell my mother about the note. I kept working. The 2 years between that note and the Easter lunch were the 2 most productive and the most invisible years of my professional life. Invisible in the sense that the work I was doing did not produce the kinds of milestones that translate easily into conversation. No single dramatic moment. No award ceremony, no public announcement. Just the daily accumulation of problems solved, frameworks built, junior analysts mentored, and decisions made well, and then made again. In May 2021, I built a client segmentation framework that became a firm-wide template. I know the exact date it was formalized, May 27, 2021, because Nadia Chen, Stewart's executive assistant, sent a firm-wide email that afternoon announcing its adoption. My name was in the second paragraph. I did not forward it to my mother. In October 2021, I led a cross-functional working group charged with developing a new service offering in organizational design consulting. The group had 7 members. We worked for 14 weeks. The offering launched in Q3 of 2022 and generated $1.3 million in new revenue in its first 6 months. Stewart mentioned it in a partner meeting on September 8, 2022, at 10 a.m., attributing the concept directly to the working group. Patricia told me afterward, in the elevator, that he had used my name specifically in the closed portion of the meeting before the associates were invited in. I did not call my mother from the parking structure. I had stopped doing that at 17. The habit had simply extended forward. In November 2022, I had a conversation with my mother that I want to tell you about because it belongs to the shape of what was already building between us, even though nothing dramatic happened in it. We were on the phone a Sunday evening, November 6th, and she asked how things were going at work. I said they were going well. She asked if I was being careful not to overextend. I said I was managing my workload thoughtfully. She said, I just worry that you push yourself and then the company restructures and you're the first one out because you cost too much. I said, I understand. She said, I'm just being realistic. I said, I know. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a while. Outside it was raining, the thin November kind that can't decide if it's serious. I looked at my phone, and I thought about the personnel file note from March 2021 and the segmentation template and the organizational design working group and the $1.3 million in new revenue and the 14 weeks and the 7 people I had led through it, and I thought, she does not know that any of this exists. And then I thought, she has not asked. That was the moment the 2 thoughts arrived together for the first time, and I understood that they were not separate. She did not know because she had not asked, and she had not asked because she had already decided what the answer would be, and I had stopped offering the answer because I had learned what happened when I did. Something inside me finally went cold. Not in anger, in recognition. The cold of finally naming a thing accurately after a long time of naming it approximately. I made tea. I went to bed. I was at my desk by 7:30 the next morning. In December 2022, Patricia Osei came to my office at 4:38 p.m. on a Friday. I had been about to leave, my coat already in my hand, and told me the partners had approved my promotion to Director of Strategy, effective May 1st. She said, "This has been coming for a long time. Stuart specifically asked that your name be brought forward." He didn't have to do that. He did it because the record was clear. I thanked her. She left. I stood at my office window for 4 minutes looking at the city. Then I went down to the parking structure and drove home. I called no one from the car. I told my mother 4 days later at the Easter table with the good plates and 12 people and lemon cake, and she put down her fork and told me it was timing and luck. I started the director role on May 1st. The first thing I did was show up at 7:45 a.m., make my own coffee, and sit at my new desk for 10 minutes before anyone else arrived. Not as ritual, simply as the ordinary beginning of the ordinary work. I had learned, slowly and through repetition, that the dramatic moments of a career are not the ones that shape it. It is the 7:45 a.m.s. It is the 10 minutes before anyone arrives, when you decide what kind of person you're going to be that day. On May 8th, at 9:15 a.m., I attended my first executive strategy meeting as director. I had prepared a briefing document, 14 pages, 3 weeks of work, 2 rounds of revision after Patricia reviewed it. Stuart Calloway looked at page 4, where I had outlined the diagnostic framework for a new engagement, and said, in the particular unhurried way of someone stating a thing they have already decided is true, "This is exactly the kind of thinking we brought Cora here to do." I wrote it down in my notebook when I returned to my desk. The careful person's instinct. In June, the firm was approached by a journalist from a national business publication working on a feature about mid-market consulting firms that had outperformed during the post-pandemic restructuring cycle. Stuart agreed to a profile interview. The interview was scheduled for June 14th. Nadia Chen sent a calendar notification to the full executive team, which now included me. I noted the date and returned to the brief I was drafting for a new client in logistics. I did not know that my name would appear in the article. The article published on Tuesday, November 7th, at 6 a.m. By 7:23 a.m., it had been forwarded to the firm's internal distribution list by the communications director, James Whitlow, whose subject line read simply, "We're in the journal. Front of business section." I was at my kitchen table with coffee I had made at 6:45 when the notification came through. The article was 2,200 words, covering 4 firms, with Calloway Group featured most prominently. Stuart was quoted 6 times. On the 3rd page of the digital version, in the section on strategic repositioning, the journalist wrote, "Calloway credits much of the shift to internal talent development. Cora Maddox is the architect of the strategy we've been executing for the past 18 months, said CEO Stuart Calloway. She built the framework that changed how we approach every engagement. My name, in a national publication, attributed by my CEO. Then, for paragraphs later, the new service offering came directly from Cora Maddox's working group, Calloway added. She identified the gap before any of us did.
Twice.
I read the article at 7:31 a.m. I read it twice. Then I put my phone face down on the table and sat still for a while with my coffee going cold in front of me, and I let the article be what it was without doing anything about it yet. Something inside me went completely quiet. Not triumphant. Quieter than triumph. More like the feeling of a long equation resolving. Not sudden, not dramatic, just the particular, specific satisfaction of a thing arriving at its correct answer after a long time of remaining open. I picked up my phone, for messages had come in. Patricia Osei, at 7:28 a.m. Read the piece. Well deserved. See you at 9. A colleague, at 7:34 a.m. You're famous. Lunch is on you. Nadia Chen, at 7:41 a.m. Mr. Calloway asked me to tell you the quotes were not accidental. And then, at 7:52 a.m., a text from my mother. It was not a call. It was not a voicemail. It was a text message containing one thing, a link to the article. No caption. No words. No punctuation before or after. Just the link, blue and underlined, sitting in the middle of a white message bubble. I looked at that message for a long time. I did not respond to it that morning. I put my phone in my bag, drove to the office, attended the 9 o'clock meeting, and did the work. At 11:14 a.m., my mother called from her cell phone. I was in a client call and let it go to voicemail. At 2:38 p.m., she called from her office line. I was in a document review with Patricia and let that go too. At 6:47 p.m., I was alone at my desk finishing a brief when her name appeared on my screen a third time. I let it ring 4 times. Then I set the phone back down and looked at it for a moment, and I thought about an Easter table and the fork set down deliberately on the edge of the plate and the lemon cake and the 40-minute drive home, and I thought, she deserves a conversation, not a voicemail exchange. She will get one. On my schedule. She left a voicemail after the third call. I listened to it the following morning, November 8th, at 6:55 a.m., sitting in my car in the parking structure before going in. She said, "Cora, it's Mom." I read the article. All of it. I wanted to say that what your boss said about you, what he wrote, it's really wonderful. And I've been thinking about Easter, and I think I was hard on you, and I don't think I gave you enough credit, and I would like to talk when you have a chance. I love you. Call me when you can. I sat in that car for 3 full minutes with the voicemail finished, and the parking structure concrete gray around me, and the morning starting outside. Real healing is not one voicemail fixing what has been said across years. I knew that. I had known it for a long time. But the shape of what she had managed to say, the pause before, wonderful, the false start before, I think I was hard on you, the specificity of I don't think I gave you enough credit, which was more precise than she usually managed, told me that this was the closest she was capable of coming to what I had needed to hear. And that closest counts for something. Not for everything, but for something. I called her back that evening, November 8th, at 7:30 p.m. She answered on the first ring. "Cora," she said, and my name and her voice had a quality it did not usually have. Careful, attending, the quality of someone who has decided to pay full attention.
"Hi, Mom," I said.
A pause. Then, the article was really something. It was, I said. "Stuart Calloway said you were the architect."
"He did," I said.
Another pause, longer. "I didn't know about the framework. Or the working group."
"I didn't know any of that."
I let that sit for a moment. "I know," I said. "I should have asked," she said. I counted to 4. "Yes," I said. "You should have." She said she was sorry. She said it in the way people say things they mean but have not had much practice saying, a little quickly, the words arriving fractionally ahead of their full weight, the way you say a thing when you are committing to it before you can talk yourself back. I accepted it the way I have learned to accept what people offer when what they offer is smaller than what was needed, with recognition of the effort, and without pretending the effort is the same as the thing itself. We talked for 22 minutes. It was the longest conversation about my professional life that we had ever had. She asked specific questions about the framework, about the working group, about Stuart Calloway and how the firm operated and what the director role actually meant in practice, and I answered all of them without softening the numbers or the timeline or the volume of work involved. By the end of the call, something between us had shifted. Not repaired. I want to be accurate about this. Shifted. The way a door shifts on its hinge when you finally push it the right direction. Ray did not call. I did not expect him to, and I found, when I checked that expectation against my actual feelings, that I did not need him to. I still go to holiday lunches. My mother still makes lemon cake. We talk about my work now. She asks, I answer, and the conversation has a different quality than it did before, a kind of genuine attention on her side that was not always there, and that I am still learning to receive without bracing for the moment it changes back. It may change back. People are not transformed by one article. But the direction of the change matters, and the direction, for now, is one I can work with. There is something I keep returning to, and I want to offer it not as a lesson but as the thing I actually learned, slowly, the hard way. You cannot build your confidence inside someone else's approval, because approval is subject to revision in ways that confidence does not have to be. The framework existed before the article. The working group existed before the article. The 14 weeks and the 7 people and the $1.3 million in new revenue all existed before anyone with a national platform named them in print. Stuart Calloway said the name of the person who did the work. The name was mine. No amount of recategorizing that as timing or luck can alter the sequence of decisions and early mornings and careful documents that produced it. That belongs to me. It has always belonged to me. It belonged to me on the 40-minute drive home from Easter lunch, when I was sitting with an offer letter on my passenger seat and not entirely sure I believed it myself. If you are in a situation where your work is being minimized by the people closest to you, keep the record. Document the performance reviews, the project outcomes, the notes from the people who have seen your work clearly. A manager or mentor who advocates for your contributions, the way Patricia Osei did for mine, is worth every investment you can make in that relationship. Find that person early. The clarity will come from the work itself. Let the work be the argument. And I want to leave you with this. If you were sitting at that Easter table for days into a promotion you had earned across 6 years of documented work, and your mother put down her fork and told you it was timing and luck, would you have shown her the record right then, in front of everyone? The personnel file note, the client outcomes, the specific numbers? Or would you have done what I did? Finished your plate, poured more water, and let 7 months arrive on their own? I think your answer tells you something true about who you are. I would like to know which one it is.